Department and the FBI force has been here. They may think they prepare for this kind of thing, Pierre, but man, it must have been a shock.
Stunning shock. The FBI Special Operations Center is now in full alert. The FBI extremely concerned that there would be additional attacks. Normally when you have a situation like this, they immediately get on the line with the CIA, the various intelligence agencies, trying to get a sense of who might have been planning something. But right now, the first order of business is to protect against a second attack, third attack. The feeling is normally when you have this kind of situation, there will be more attacks almost immediately.
Let's go to the trade tower again, because, John, we now have what do we have? We don't...
It looks like a new plume, a new large plume of smoke.
Now, it may be that something fell off the building. It may be that something has fallen. We don't know, to be perfectly honest. But that is what you're looking at, is the current. That's the scene at this moment at the World Trade Center. Dan Daler from ABC's Good Morning America is down in the general vicinity. Dan, can you tell us what has just happened?
Yes, Peter, it's Don Daler down here. I'm 4 blocks north of the World Trade Center. The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. The entire building has just collapsed, as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it folded down on itself, and it is not there anymore.
That should be it.
Thanks very much, Dan.
It has completely collapsed.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
That's the southern tower you're talking about.
Exactly. The second building that we witnessed the airplane enter had been, the top half had been fully involved in flame. It just collapsed. There is panic on the streets. Thousands of people running up Church Street, which is what I'm looking out on, trying to get away. But the entire, at least as far as I can see, the top half of the building, at least half of it, I can't see below that, half of it just started with a gigantic rumble, folded in on itself, and collapsed in a huge plume of smoke and dust.
We're talking about massive casualties here at the moment, and we have, that is extraordinary.
There is panic on the streets. There are people screaming and running from the site. The gigantic plume of smoke has reached me, and I'm probably a quarter of a mile north of there.
Peter.
Now, this is what it looked like moments ago. My God. The southern tower, 10 o'clock Eastern time this morning, just collapsing on itself. This is a place where thousands of people work. We have no idea what caused this. If you wish to bring anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
Peter?
Yes, Dan.
What appeared to happen from my vantage point, the top part of the building was totally involved in fire, and there appeared to be no effort possible to put that fire out. It looked like the top part of the building was so weakened by the fire that the weight of it collapsed the rest of the building. That's what appeared to happen. I did not see anything happening at the base of the building. It all appeared to start at the top and then just collapse the rest of the building by the sheer weight of the top. There was no explosion or anything at the base part of it, but I did see that the top part of it started to collapse. The walls started to bulge out, bricks, glass things coming out, and then it collapsed in on itself, and it appeared to just fold down from there, from the very top.
Thanks, Don, very much. Just looking at that, I don't know why, but when was the last time the United States was attacked in this fashion? It was Pearl Harbor in 1941. John?
From the scene now, there's obviously massive casualties. Usually during these things, there's a little bit of a high pitch, but basic calm over the police radios among the emergency workers. I can hear them screaming, signal 1013, which is the police code for help, calling for help at the triage center, where other people who were already injured have been injured more. confirming that the building has collapsed. Dozens of officers, more civilians are injured. And we don't know, although I'd have to suggest, given the size of that building, what progress the evacuation was in of the tower that collapsed.
Explosion, we can see a billowing smoke rising, and I'll tell you that I can't see that second tower, but there was a cascade of sparks and fire, and now it looks almost like a mushroom cloud explosion, this huge billowing smoke in the second tower. This was the second of the two towers hit, and I cannot see behind that smoke, obviously, as you can either. The first tower in front has not changed, and we see this extraordinarily and frightening scene behind us of this second tower, now just encased in smoke. What is behind it, I cannot tell you. But just look at that. That is about as frightening a scene as you will ever see. Again, this is going on now in two cities. We have a report that there is a fire at the State Department as well, and that is being evacuated. So we've got fires at the Pentagon evacuated, the State Department evacuated, the White House evacuated on the basis of what the Secret Service describes as a credible terrorist threat. We have two explosions, two planes hitting the World Trade Center here in New York. And what this second explosion was that took place about a part of the south, that would be the South Tower, has apparently collapsed. We don't know if that was from the impact of this first plane that hit it or whether something else has happened there, and we'll work on that. Our Washington Bureau Chief, Frank Cesno, is on the phone. Frank, what are you hearing?
Aaron, I just drove past the Pentagon across the 14th Street Bridge, which is now choked with traffic. We're beginning to hear emergency sirens and rescue personnel fanning out across Washington. There is a gigantic black billowing cloud of smoke that is rising over the Pentagon. You heard Jamie McIntyre a moment ago describe where that was coming from. I can also tell you that local radio, in addition to talking about evacuations, as we've heard at the Pentagon, the White House is reporting that the Capitol building has been evacuated and the Treasury Department has been evacuated. Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, is exceptionally tense and clearly taking steps as if it is virtually under siege here. We don't know specifically, as you've said, what has taken place at the Pentagon, but this is very serious, striking at the heart of the national government. And as John King was explaining, the White House
Frank, it's Aaron. I need to interrupt you for a second. Again, there has been a second explosion here in Manhattan at the Trade Center. We are getting reports that a part of the tower, the second tower, the one a bit further to the south of us, has collapsed. We are checking on that. We are also told that the Sears Tower in Chicago has been evacuated, and what I can't tell you on that is whether there was something specific that happened there, whether there was an attack on that building yet, we're checking that out, or whether there was a warning, whether there was a threat of some sort, or whether that is simply precautionary. What we can tell you is that just in the last several minutes here, 2 or 3 minutes, a second or third, I guess technically, extraordinary event has happened here in Lower Manhattan. You can see this extraordinary plume of smoke that is, or was at least, the second tower of the World Trade Center. Perhaps 3 or 4 minutes ago, you could, from where we were standing, see that second building that is just a bit to the south of the first building, but you can't see it anymore. It is covered with smoke. A large plume of smoke also coming still from the first tower, where the first plane hit at about 8:45.
Actually confirmed, some not. That's the environment in which we're dealing. Now, President Bush was in Florida this morning. He called this an apparent act of terrorism and rushed back to Washington. The president is in the air going back to Washington at the moment. Now, in Washington, the report spread that a plane also crashed at the Pentagon. See, as David Martin says, there are at least several injuries. Several is the word he used. The FAA has banned all aircraft takeoffs nationwide. Here in New York, the city is on a full terrorist alert. Bridges and tunnels are closed. You recall the World Trade Center was the target of a terrorist bombing in 1993. Now, again, it's important to point out that with television, what we can show you is what is at the end of the television camera. The whole city is not in smoke and flames, not by a long shot. The city is on a terrorist alert. Entry into the city has been closed off. Tunnels and bridges are closed off as a precautionary measure. But, you know, in many, many areas of New York City, life goes on this morning, and the same is true in Washington, D.C. So just keep in mind that when you see this picture constantly, it's of one section of New York City, and we go to Washington for the picture there, the Pentagon, the same thing.
All the emergency vehicles and the people who might have been injured early in the morning.
Well, you remember when the bomb went off in the basement of it in 1993, how much damage was done throughout that building, how much chaos there was at that time. These are two coordinated airplane attacks on the building on the upper reaches of it. That will have an enormous structural effect. Those buildings, I think that it's fair to say, will probably have to be brought down. It's too early to speculate on that, but there's been that kind of damage.
Let's talk again. You were talking about
have somebody actually.
This is a reporter here in New York from WNBC. You talk about the fact this plane was taken from Boston on the way to Los Angeles. The reports are that it was being diverted to JFK. And just for people who aren't familiar with the geography of this area, the southern tip of Manhattan would be very much near the flight, the landing pattern for JFK Airport. It could have been easy for a hijacker to pretend that he was taking that plane to JFK and veer off at the last minute.
Yeah, I heard one eyewitness say that over Washington Square, which is in the lower reaches of Manhattan, he saw a plane go over at about 1,000 feet, apparently the American Airlines flight, and then do what he described as a sharp right turn right toward the World Trade Center. He then lost sight of it.
And one eyewitness here in this AP report says he was getting off a PATH train to the World Trade Center and saw bodies falling out of the building. As he approached it, police told him to get out of the building immediately. He ran outside and watched people jump out of the first building, and then there was a second explosion.
This footage we're seeing right now shows that the damage is so severe. I mean, we had seen what seemed to be two fairly self-contained impact craters before, and now it appears something much more dramatic has happened to at least one of those towers.
These pictures are beyond belief.
We have a report that the second plane may have flown out of Newark, New Jersey. This is an official who was speaking on the condition of anonymity. Again, there is no confirmation of that. We just know that there were two planes that went in. The first one apparently was an American Airlines flight that was from Boston to Los Angeles. We're now seeing it from the harbor view of this continuing damage and destruction to the World Trade Center.
Incidentally, Tom, I just want to interrupt you for 2 seconds because apparently Jamie Gangel has some more information for us. Jamie?
Spoken again to U.S. officials with access to the highest intelligence, and they are now confirming that it does appear that at the Pentagon it was a plane. Again, they are saying they believe now a third plane was involved at the Pentagon.
And of course, this has been the nightmare, Katie, for national security officials for a long time. We talk about nuclear bombs and those kinds of exchanges or invasions, but everyone has been terribly worried about the suitcase-sized bomb of some kind or an airplane or an attack on our subways in the large cities. And this, obviously, no one had anticipated. 3 airplanes that were deliberately aimed at critical targets in America. We can only hope that it's over for today, but officials are taking no chances on all that. They're evacuating all critical buildings because, as Mr. Johnson said earlier, this is an open society. James Kallstrom from the FBI also pointing out that almost anyone can come in here. They have access to so many instruments that can be used as instruments of attack and terrorism, and that certainly has been the case today.
Let's go to our...
Fighting quite frantically on something else.
It's at the scene now at the World Trade Center. Because of the concerns of the structural stability of the remaining tower, a temporary headquarters mobilization point triage center was set up at Stuyvesant High School, which is about 2.5 blocks up and slightly across the street. Now the concern is that if the building falls, if the second building falls, that it will be falling in that direction. So they are now evacuating their own command post and triage center, and they have to find an even further zone to move that to. Something that is striking about this today is that this is indicative of, with a car bomb at the State Department, a plane crash into the Pentagon, 2 planes designated to crash into each tower of the World Trade Center, bringing one down. It connotes the level of planning and sophistication and extreme logistical ability that probably makes this singularly the largest, most well-coordinated act of terrorism, not just in U.S. history, but probably
certainly in modern times.
In modern times.
Yeah,
unprecedented. And
every time you say that, I'm going to go immediately to Washington now, but every time you say that, I keep thinking of how we are told time and time and time again by the Pentagon and by the State Department that they know something's going on in the world today.
They seem to have the problem at the North Tower, Peter.
Let's look at the North Tower quickly.
Seems to be coming down.
Oh my God.
The second tower.
It's hard to put it into words, and maybe one doesn't need to. Both trade towers, where thousands of people work, on this day, Tuesday, have now been attacked and destroyed, with thousands of people either in them or in the immediate area adjacent to them. There is simply no way to accurately describe the emotion this evokes in people all over the world, friends of the United States and enemies of the United States as well.
Them to remain calm, to remain at home, or to remain at their place of business, unless they're in Lower Manhattan. By that I mean south of Canal Street. If you're south of Canal Street, get out, walk, and walk slowly, carefully. There are plenty of police around, but just walk directly. If you can't figure out what else to do, just walk directly north. That'll get you out of the dangerous smoke area. It'll also do us a big favor. It'll open up those streets, because we're going to be moving a large number of ambulances and emergency personnel in and out of there all day. I've talked to the governor. He is putting the National Guard on alert so that they can relieve our police officers and our firefighters later this afternoon. And we've asked the federal government for help from the urban search and rescue team. So right now, we're using all of our police and firefighters and emergency personnel to help the people down there. Later on, we're probably going to need reinforcements.
Mayor Giuliani, I realize that it must be more than a chaotic situation, particularly since the bunker has been compromised and cordoned off. But can you give us any sense? There are so many people watching now who must have loved ones down in that area and are concerned of the systematic...
My heart goes out to them. I've never seen anything like this. I was there from shortly after it happened and saw people jumping out of the World Trade Center. It's a horrible, horrible situation. And all that I can tell them is that every resource that we have is attempting to rescue as many people as possible. And the end result is going to be some horrendous number of lives lost. I don't think we know yet. But right now, we have to just focus on saving as many people as possible.
Can you give us a sense of, if there is in fact some system being implemented, what that system is, and where people are being taken?
People are triaging. People are being taken to every area hospital possible, even virtually within minutes. I drove down right past St. Vincent's Hospital, and I could see them actually on the street ready to take people, and that was within minutes of the first airplane hitting the World Trade Center. So the hospitals are ready. We'll be moving them to all different area hospitals, triaging them. The main thing is having those streets open so that we can get people in and out of the southern part of Manhattan as quickly as possible, so that we can move them, to hospitals all over the city.
And Mayor Giuliani, we'll let you...
in place. They're doing it. We just need the cooperation of people in getting out of there.
We'll let you get back to the operations there, and we do appreciate you taking the time for us here.
But once again, the only thing to do now is to remain calm and try to assist in the rescue effort.
Thank you.
Now let's pray.
That's New York's Mayor Rudy Giuliani talking to CNN affiliate New York One here. saying that clearly there's going to be tremendous number of lives lost on these attacks here in New York, urging people to stay calm and to leave the area calmly. The area is in the southern part of Manhattan, way down on the tip of Manhattan Island. The mayor urging people to calmly move north. CNN.
That the plane was being hijacked and he was back near the bathroom of the airplane. He repeatedly said this is not a hoax, that the plane was being hijacked, that he needed help, and 911 operators at this point were trying to gather more information from him. The gentleman then relayed that there had been an explosion. He just heard an explosion on the plane. He saw a cloud of white smoke, and then seconds after that last transmission on that cellular telephone, the gentleman, the line went dead. And 911 lost the cellular caller at that point. That was at 9:58 this morning. About 45 minutes later, the 911 center received a call from a resident in the Shanksville area of Somerset County, which is off Route 30. We understand it's about 8 miles east of Jennerstown, saying that there was a large cloud of smoke and apparently something had crashed. So that is the very latest information. The 911 operator told me that it is apparently a 757 jet, a United Airlines commercial jet with approximately 90 people on board. He said it crashed apparently in a heavily wooded area. Again, at this point, no indication of any of the injuries, the extent of the injuries.
That is a report from from Pittsburgh, a reporter, Rick Earl, who was talking about a report of a cell phone conversation, a 911 call about the possible terrorist attack on that plane that crashed near Pittsburgh this morning. This is unprecedented, what happened here. Susan, you had something?
No, I was going to say that this plane, we don't know whether this is connected with the other two, but this crash has been confirmed. It was a United flight from Newark to San Francisco. Crashed after about 45 minutes after the one that hit the Pentagon.
It's been a long time since Washington has seen anything like this. Indeed, not since 1968, when 14th Street erupted in fire after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Traffic in the area now is said to be hellacious. There are a lot of concerns about safety and security in our town. The town has been shut down as it regards government offices. All employees have been told to go home. Connecticut and K is pretty much the center of downtown in our city. Pat Collins is standing by there now. Pat, what's the situation?
Jim, I'm at Connecticut and K Street. A tremendous exodus out of Washington going on now. It's been going on for some hours now. Let's take a look down K Street. You can see how congested it is. It has been that way for some time. Out there trying to direct traffic, a Golden Triangle volunteer. This is a frequent sight. You can see officials, law enforcement officials coming and going to the White House, which is only a couple blocks away. Their sirens on, people trying to let them through, but a tremendous crush of traffic and people trying to make their way home on foot, by car, using the metro. It has been going on for some time. We spent almost a half an hour just trying to move one block. If you know somebody who is trying to leave the city, you should tell them the best way to do that is to get on a road either north, east, or south, but do not try to go across the city. Don't try to cross the city diagonally. It's best to go north, east, west, or south directly on one road and then make your way to your destination once you get out of this tremendous traffic jam. You can see, again, more officials coming and going, sirens on. They have set up an enormous perimeter around the White House, people making their way on foot. Occasionally, we've seen them stop at the window of some of the electronic stores. They're looking at television, watching the reports on what's happening. Most of the people, though, walking, trying to get away from the center of downtown. As you know, the government is closed. Most businesses are closed down. Many of the shops and restaurants, of course, are closed down. This is like a rush hour to the second power here in midday Washington as people try to get out of the center of downtown, try to make their way home. Also try to get in touch with the rest of their family, and that's a problem because cell phone service is really clogged. It is almost impossible to make a cell phone call from downtown. Jim?
They destroyed both of New York's 110-story tall towers, and they plunged into the Pentagon. This is the timeline. The South Tower of the World Trade Center was hit around 9 o'clock. Then the North Tower was hit. Air traffic in the U.S. was closed about 9:30. President Bush spoke from Florida. At that time, he's spoken since via videotape from Louisiana. Around 10 o'clock, a plane crashed at the helicopter pad at the Pentagon, did damage, set fire to portions of the Pentagon. There have been some casualties. Any dead, we don't know. There were some injured because we saw them at the Pentagon. Then the South Tower incredibly collapsed. Then the North Tower, the Twin Towers, the World Trade Center collapsed. And one pauses after you say that because, you know, it's almost unbelievable. And then there was a plane crash in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. That's in the Pittsburgh area. Now, Pentagon spokesman Glenn Flood is just now quoted as saying, and I quote him directly, that there have been extensive casualties and an unknown number of fatalities at the Defense Department. That's the first time they've confirmed that they've been casualties. We go to see
Roger Goodman, our director, because this is, we've seen footage before of people on the run, and I understand that that's your shadow as you went by a storefront.
Yeah, actually,
right?
it was. It's the first time I've seen that.
And was there absolute panic immediately?
Instantly. It was just pandemonium. Nobody knew what to do. There was no clear thinking. People were just reacting to kind of save themselves and the
this
people
is
around them.
You're in the same location when the building comes down.
I had been taken downstairs by Port Authority police who knew that I had this videotape. And we were moving actually to go back to the Trinity Church to make them a dub of the tape in a format that they could use on a VHS tape. And suddenly I heard one of the guys say, "Hey, Evan, watch out."
Hang on just a second. If you look in the upper, this now is frozen. And this is an angle of this attack that we have not seen before. At the top of the building on your left, out of the left, will come the building. And watch how the aircraft penetrates the building. Go ahead. Completely in one side and out the other.
It just disappeared. It disappeared.
The United States. That building was reconstructed almost immediately.
Well, I interrupt you because this is an extraordinary sequence of a cameraman actually going in at great risk into one of the buildings. I'm trying to see it. What is it? I can't see it on that image. Up an elevator. No, up an elevator. What we have to imagine here, and we can see it there, is the incredible volume of dust. This has come from two buildings, enormous buildings made of steel and concrete, which have simply collapsed. Now imagine, Stephen Simon, that repeated across many blocks in South Manhattan. 50,000 people alone work in those two towers of the World Trade Center.
Well, these conspirators accomplished what the 1994 conspirators sought to accomplish. They wanted to cause one tower to topple into the other, destroying both, killing everyone in those buildings.
And here we see it again. We're just getting really a sample of the horror of what has happened. But when you or your equivalent now in the National Security Council have to confront a desk and a large number of senior people down in the bunker in the White House when the president and everyone is demanding action, is it achievable?